I never told my husband about my monthly salary of $37,000 until he accidentally found my bank statement. He sued me to take half. But in court, his face turned pale when I— Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 32 years, I thought I knew what a good marriage looked like. My name is Margaret Thornton, and at 67 years old, I believed I had built something solid with my husband, Robert. We lived in a modest 2-story house in suburban Ohio, the kind of place where neighbors still waved and kids rode bikes until sunset. Robert was a retired high school principal. I was a freelance financial consultant. We had our routines, our quiet evenings, our Sunday brunches. Life was comfortable, or so I thought. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning in March. I was making coffee when Robert walked into the kitchen, his face tight with an expression I didn't recognize. "Margaret," he said, his voice oddly formal. "We need to talk about money." My hand froze on the coffee pot. "What about it?" "I think we should combine our finances completely, full transparency, joint accounts for everything." I felt a cold finger trace down my spine. In all our years together, Robert had never cared much about finances. He had his pension. I had my consulting work. We split household expenses down the middle, kept our own accounts, never questioned it. "Why now? Is something wrong?" I asked carefully. "Wrong? No. I just think married couples should share everything. Don't you?" The way he said it, there was something underneath. Something probing. I made a non-committal sound and changed the subject, but the seed of unease had been planted. Over the next few weeks, the questions continued. How much did I make last year? What kind of clients did I have? Could he see my tax returns? Each inquiry was wrapped in a veneer of casual interest, but I wasn't fooled. Robert was hunting for something. I had been keeping a secret, you see, a significant one. For the past 8 years, I had been working as a senior consultant for 3 major corporations, helping them restructure their financial operations. The work was demanding, often conducted remotely from my home office, while Robert thought I was just doing some bookkeeping for small businesses. The compensation was substantial, $37,000 per month, deposited into a private account Robert knew nothing about. Why had I hidden it? The answer was complicated. When I first landed the contracts, I had planned to tell him. But then I overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. Robert, talking to his brother, saying, "If Margaret ever makes real money, I'll be set for life. Community property, brother. What's hers is mine." The casual entitlement in his voice had chilled me. So I stayed quiet, kept my accounts separate, and watched him more carefully. Now, apparently, he was watching me too. The breaking point came on a humid afternoon in late April. I'd been out grocery shopping, and when I returned, I found Robert in my home office, a space he never entered. He was standing by my desk, my bank statement in his hand, his face drained of color. $37,000, he whispered, staring at the paper. Every month, for years. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. "Robert, put that down. That's private." He looked up at me, and I saw a stranger. The warmth I had known for 3 decades was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Private? We're married, Margaret. There is no private. This money, half of it is mine." "That's not how this works. We'll see about that." He folded the statement carefully, slipped it into his pocket. "My lawyer will be very interested in this." The room seemed to tilt. "Your lawyer? You already have a lawyer?" Robert smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been preparing for this conversation for a while, Margaret. I knew you were hiding something. I just needed proof." He walked past me, his shoulder brushing mine, and I heard him climb the stairs to our bedroom. I stood frozen in my office, the grocery bag still in my hands, as the foundation of my life crumbled beneath my feet. How long had he been planning this? And what else did I not know about the man I had slept beside for 32 years? That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the guest bedroom. I couldn't bear to share a bed with Robert, and did calculations in my head. Numbers had always been my refuge, my way of making sense of chaos. The math was brutal. 8 years of income, $37,000 per month. That was roughly $3.5 million accumulated in various investment accounts and CDs. If Robert successfully argued for community property division, he could walk away with over $1.7 million of money. He had no idea existed until yesterday. Money I had earned. Money I had hidden specifically because I feared this exact scenario. But fear wasn't enough anymore. I needed to understand what I was really facing. At dawn, I crept downstairs and made coffee with shaking hands. Robert emerged around 8, showered and dressed as if this were any normal day. He poured himself coffee, added cream, didn't look at me. "I've filed the paperwork," he said calmly, stirring his cup. "You'll be served within the week. My attorney says this is a straightforward case. Ohio is an equitable distribution state, and you deliberately concealed marital assets. The court won't look kindly on that." My throat tightened. "Robert, we can talk about this." "The time for talking is over, Margaret." He finally met my eyes. "You lied to me for 8 years. You made me look like a fool. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could just keep all that money for yourself? I earned that money during our marriage, which makes it ours." He set down his cup with a sharp click. "My lawyer says I have an excellent case. You might want to get your own attorney. You're going to need one." He left for his morning walk, and I sat alone in the kitchen, my mind racing. Was I wrong to hide the money? Maybe. But I had heard him, heard his casual assumption that my success would become his windfall. I had protected myself, and now he was punishing me for it. But Robert had made a critical error. He assumed I would be passive, that I would simply accept this betrayal and write him a check. He didn't know who he was dealing with. I spent the next 3 days quietly gathering information. I called an old friend from my consulting days, a divorce attorney named Patricia Weiss, and explained the situation over encrypted email. Her response came within hours. "Margaret, you need to move fast. Document everything. Get copies of all financial records, emails, phone bills, and start thinking about why he suddenly got interested in your money. Men don't usually go from indifferent to litigious overnight. There's often something, or someone, motivating them." Someone. The word stuck in my mind like a thorn. I went to Robert's computer that evening while he was at his weekly poker game. I had his password. He used the same one for everything, our wedding anniversary backwards, and I logged into his email. What I found made my stomach turn. Emails to a woman named Cheryl Davidson, dozens of them going back 6 months. The tone was unmistakable, intimate, affectionate, planning. They talked about their future together, about finally being free, about a condo in Florida where they could start fresh. And then I found the email that made everything clear. "Once I get my half of Margaret's money, we can stop worrying," Robert had written. "My lawyer says it's a sure thing. She hid income during the marriage, which actually works in our favor. We're looking at close to $2 million. Enough to live very comfortably, my love." Cheryl's response? "I can't wait to be Mrs. Thornton number 2. But what if she fights it, Robert?" "She won't. She's too honest, too by the book. She'll feel guilty about hiding the money and probably settle just to avoid court. I know my wife." I sat back, my hands trembling. This wasn't about betrayal or hurt feelings. This was calculated. Robert had discovered my income, immediately retained a lawyer, and planned to use the money to fund a new life with another woman. He didn't know me at all, but I knew him now, and I was going to use that knowledge. I forwarded the emails to a secure cloud account, cleared the browsing history, and shut down the computer. Then I went to my office and started making a list. Not of assets to protect, I would handle that with Patricia, but of every financial decision Robert and I had made over 32 years. Every joint purchase, every shared expense. Every time I had quietly paid more than my share. Robert wanted to play hardball? Fine. I had been consulting on corporate financial warfare for 8 years. I knew exactly how to fight back, and I was just getting started. Patricia Weiss arrived at my house on Monday morning, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing an expression that meant business. She was a woman in her late 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, someone I had helped navigate a complicated business merger years ago. She owed me a favor, and she was here to repay it. "Show me everything," she said, declining my offer of coffee. We spent 4 hours in my office, going through bank statements, tax returns, email printouts, and the evidence of Robert's affair. Patricia took notes in neat, precise handwriting, asking questions that cut straight to the bone. "When did you first deposit money into the separate account?" "October 2016, 8 years ago." "And Robert never asked about increased income?" "I told him I was doing bookkeeping for small businesses. He never questioned it. He wasn't interested in my work." Patricia nodded. "That helps. It shows a pattern of separate financial lives, not deliberate concealment with intent to defraud. But Margaret, I need to be honest with you. Ohio courts don't like hidden assets, regardless of motive. We need a different strategy." "What kind of strategy?" She looked up, a small smile playing at her lips. "We prove that Robert forfeited his right to equitable distribution through his own misconduct. The affair is good, but we need more. Financial misconduct would be better. Has he ever taken money that wasn't his? Made unauthorized purchases? Anything?" I thought for a moment, then remembered something. 3 years ago, he took out a home equity line of credit without telling me. I found out when the bank sent a letter to the house. He said it was for renovations, but we never did any renovations. Patricia leaned forward. "How much?" $50,000. "Where did it go?" "I don't know. I was angry, but he smoothed it over, said he had invested it and would pay it back. He never did. I let it drop because I didn't want to fight." "Find out where that money went," Patricia said. "Bank records, credit card statements, anything. If he spent marital funds on his mistress, we have a much stronger case." She left me with a list of documents to gather and a court date. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks away. Robert would be served with my counterfiling tomorrow. I didn't have to wait long for his reaction. He stormed into the house that evening, waving papers in the air, his face purple with rage. "What the hell is this, Margaret? You're countersuing? You're accusing me of dissipation of marital assets?" I was sitting in the living room, a cup of tea growing cold on the side table. I looked at him calmly. "You took $50,000 from our home equity and never told me where it went. I'd like to know. That's none of your business." "It's entirely my business. It was marital property, Robert, taken without my knowledge or consent. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?" His jaw worked. "This is different. That money was it was for us, for our future. Was it for Cheryl?" The room went silent. Robert's face drained of color. "What?" I stood up, keeping my distance. "Cheryl Davidson, your girlfriend. The woman you've been planning your future with, using my money to fund it. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" He took a step back, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "You went through my email. You had no right. Neither did you. You went through my private bank statements. You invaded my office. But the difference is, Robert, what you found was my money, earned by my work. What I found was evidence of adultery and financial fraud. It's not fraud. $50,000 gone. I checked our accounts, Robert. I have transaction records. You withdrew cash, made purchases, sent wire transfers, all while telling me it was for renovations. Where did that money go? He was sweating now. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. My attorney is very good at tracing financial transactions. And when we get into that courtroom, the judge is going to see all of it. Your affair, your theft of marital assets, your premeditated plan to divorce me and take half of money you only discovered because you violated my privacy. I picked up my tea, took a sip even though it was cold. You wanted transparency, Robert? You're going to get it. Every dollar, every lie, every email to Cheryl, all of it is going to be laid out in court. Margaret, wait. I've waited long enough. I walked past him toward the stairs. You should call your lawyer. Tell him things just got complicated. That night, I heard Robert on the phone in his study, his voice rising and falling in panic. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. The hunter had become the hunted, and he knew it. I lay in bed in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, and felt something shift inside me. Not quite satisfaction. This was too painful for that. But a cold, hard certainty. I was going to win this. Patricia worked fast. Within a week, she had subpoenaed Robert's bank records, credit card statements, and phone logs. What emerged was a pattern so brazen it almost impressed me. The $50,000 from the home equity line hadn't been invested. It had been spent on trips to Miami, on jewelry, on rent payments for a condo in Cheryl's name. Robert had been funding a second life while living in mine, using money that legally belonged to both of us. This is gold, Patricia said when we reviewed the evidence. Dissipation of marital assets for extramarital purposes. Ohio courts take a very dim view of this. We can argue that Robert not only concealed his affair, but actively stole from the marriage to support it. What does that mean for his lawsuit? It means his claim to half your income is going to get a lot weaker. The judge can offset your concealed income against his proven dissipation. Best case scenario, you keep most of your money and he gets nothing. Worst case, it's a wash. I nodded, feeling a grim satisfaction. When do we file? Already done. The amended complaint goes to his attorney this afternoon. The response came faster than I expected. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, a lonely affair of soup and crackers, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Robert standing there with a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger than me, maybe 50, with carefully styled blonde hair and a designer handbag. Margaret, Robert said, his voice tight, this is Cheryl. My stomach dropped. What are you doing here? Cheryl stepped forward, her smile brittle. We need to talk. Can we come in? Every instinct screamed at me to slam the door, but I stepped aside. Better to face this now than wonder what they were planning. They sat on my couch, in my house, and Robert cleared his throat. Margaret, this has gotten out of hand. The lawyers, the accusations, the court filings. It doesn't have to be this way. Then withdraw your lawsuit, I said flatly. Cheryl laughed, a sharp sound. That's not going to happen. Robert deserves half of what you hid from him. But we're willing to negotiate. Negotiate what? Robert leaned forward. You give us $1 million, cash, clean transfer, and we drop everything. No court, no scandal, no more fighting. You keep the rest. We move on with our lives. I stared at him. You want me to pay you $1 million to go away? Think of it as a settlement, Cheryl said smoothly. Much better than what a judge might order. And it saves you the embarrassment of having your financial deception exposed in court. My deception? I felt heat rising in my chest. Robert stole $50,000 to fund his affair with you. He's the one who should be embarrassed. That's pocket change compared to what you hid, Cheryl snapped. And if you don't take this deal, we'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you are, your clients, your friends, your family. We'll paint you as a greedy liar who betrayed her husband. Robert nodded. I still have friends in this town, Margaret. People respect me. They'll believe me when I tell them you've been living a double life. The threat hung in the air like smoke. They were trying to intimidate me, to make me afraid of public exposure. And maybe, a week ago, it would have worked. But not now. I stood up. Get out of my house. Margaret, get out. Both of you. And tell your lawyer that my offer is this. Robert gets nothing. Not $1 of the money I earned. In exchange, I won't press charges for theft and fraud. That's my deal. Take it, or see me in court. Cheryl's face twisted. You're making a mistake. The mistake was mine, 32 years ago, when I married a man I thought I knew. I walked to the door and opened it. You have 5 seconds before I call the police for trespassing. They left. Robert throwing me a look of pure hatred as he passed. I watched them get into Cheryl's car, a BMW, probably bought with my home equity money, and drive away. Then I closed the door, locked it, and slid down to sit on the floor, my whole body shaking. I had just declared war. The next few days were a blur of legal preparations and sleepless nights. Patricia filed a motion to freeze Robert's access to our joint accounts. Robert's lawyer filed a counter motion claiming financial hardship. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing, but I was exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving only a bone-deep weariness. Patricia noticed during our strategy session. Margaret, you need to rest. Take a few days, step back from this. Let me handle the next round. I wanted to argue, but she was right. I was running on fumes. I spent the weekend at a small bed and breakfast in the countryside, walking through autumn woods and trying to remember who I was before all this. The quiet helped. The distance helped. When I returned on Monday, I felt steadier, ready for whatever came next. The envelope arrived on Tuesday, slipped under my door while I was at my morning yoga class. Inside was a handwritten letter from Robert, his familiar slanted script filling 2 pages. My dearest Margaret, it began, and I almost laughed at the absurdity. He wrote about our early years together, the good times we had shared, the love he claimed to still feel. He apologized for how things had gotten out of hand and suggested we could find our way back to each other if I would just be reasonable about the money. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. He painted himself as a victim of circumstances, led astray by loneliness, driven to desperate measures by my secretiveness. He promised to end things with Cheryl, to commit to our marriage, to be the husband I deserved. If only I would split the money fairly and forgive his mistakes. I read it twice, feeling nothing but a cold, clear certainty. This was their new strategy. When threats didn't work, try reconciliation. Appeal to my emotions, my history with him, my supposed desire to avoid scandal. Make me doubt myself. Question whether I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. It might have worked on the Margaret of 2 months ago. I took the letter to my backyard fire pit, struck a match, and watched it burn. The paper curled and blackened, Robert's words dissolving into ash. It felt cleansing. My phone rang an hour later. Robert's number. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times that day, then switched to text messages. Did you get my letter? We need to talk, Margaret. I'm willing to forget everything if you are. Don't throw away 32 years over pride. I blocked his number. Patricia called that evening. Robert's attorney reached out. They want to mediate. They're offering to drop to 40% of your assets instead of 50. No. Margaret, think about it. 40% is still a lot of money, but it's less than... I said no. They get nothing. We go to trial. There was a pause. You're sure? Completely. I could hear the smile in her voice. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll inform opposing counsel. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my sister, Ellen. She lived in California, and we had drifted apart over the years, the way siblings sometimes do when life gets busy. But I needed someone who knew me, really knew me. Before all this. Maggie? Ellen's voice was surprised. We hadn't spoken since Christmas. Is everything okay? I told her everything. The hidden income, Robert's affair, the lawsuit, the threats, all of it. And as I spoke, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Ellen listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said, "That son of a bitch. Maggie, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I was ashamed. I thought maybe I was wrong to hide the money, that I had brought this on myself. Stop. You protected yourself from a man who saw you as a paycheck. You were smart, and now he's trying to punish you for being smarter than him. Hearing her say it, so bluntly and clearly, made something settle inside me. I'm going to fight this, Ellen. All the way. Good. You need me to come out there? I can be on a plane tomorrow. No, but thank you. Just knowing you're on my side helps. Always. And Maggie? When this is over, and you've kicked his ass in court, I'm taking you to Hawaii. Sister's trip, on Robert's theoretical dime. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. Ellen wasn't the only one who rallied around me. When word got out about the divorce, small towns being what they are, I braced myself for judgment. Instead, I found unexpected allies. Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down brought me casserole and told me she had never liked Robert anyway. Too smooth, she said, always smiling, but never warm, you know? My book club, a group of women I had been meeting with for years, threw me an impromptu divorce party with wine and chocolate and a dartboard with Robert's photo on it. We always thought you were too good for him, said Janet, who had been widowed 5 years ago. Now you have a chance to find someone who deserves you. Even my clients, when I carefully explained that I might need to adjust my schedule due to personal legal matters, were supportive. One CEO told me, "Margaret, you helped save my company. Whatever you need, you've got it." I realized I wasn't alone in this fight. I had spent so long being self-reliant, keeping my own counsel, that I had forgotten what it felt like to be supported. Robert and Cheryl could scheme and threaten all they wanted. They were 2 people driven by greed and desperation. I had an army. They came on a Thursday evening, just as the November sun was setting. I was in my office, reviewing documents for the trial that was now only a week away, when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Robert's car in the driveway. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something made me answer. Robert stood on the porch, alone this time, holding a bouquet of yellow roses, my favorite, or at least they used to be. He looked haggard, older than his 68 years, with dark circles under his eyes. "Margaret, please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "You have 3 minutes. Talk. I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, his voice soft, almost broken. "About us, about what I've done, about what I'm throwing away. She's nothing compared to what we had. I made a terrible mistake. Your time is running out, Robert. I want to withdraw the lawsuit, all of it. I don't want your money, Margaret. I just want my wife back." His eyes were wet, his hands trembling around the roses. "Can we start over? Can you forgive me?" For a split second, I almost believed him, almost. The performance was that good. But then I noticed his eyes flick to the side, toward the street, and I saw Cheryl's BMW parked 3 houses down, half hidden behind a van. She was watching. This was theater. "No," I said simply. Robert's face shifted, the mask of contrition slipping. "No? Just like that? Just like that? You're lying, Robert. Cheryl is parked down the street, probably recording this to use in court as evidence that you tried to reconcile. This is just another manipulation." His jaw tightened. "You're being paranoid." "Am I? Then call Cheryl right now. Tell her it's over. End it in front of me, and maybe I'll believe you're sincere." He didn't move. Couldn't. I stepped back. "That's what I thought. We're done here. You stupid, stubborn woman." The venom in his voice was shocking, all pretense gone. "Do you know what you're doing? You're going to lose everything in that courtroom. My lawyer has witnesses who will testify that you bragged about hiding money from me. We have proof you violated tax laws, underreported income. You're bluffing. Am I? He leaned close, and I smelled whiskey on his breath. You think you're so smart, Margaret, with your degrees and your consulting work. But you made mistakes, big ones. And when the judge sees what we have, you're not just going to lose money. You could face criminal charges. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice level. Then I guess we'll see you in court. Goodbye, Robert. I started to close the door, but he jammed his foot in the gap. This is your last chance. $1 million, and we disappear. Or we destroy you. Choose. I looked down at his foot, then back at his face. Move, or I call the police for menacing. He stared at me for a long moment, breathing hard, and I saw something ugly and desperate in his eyes. Then, finally, he stepped back. The roses fell from his hand, scattering across my porch. You're going to regret this, he said. When you're sitting in a courtroom explaining to a judge why you committed fraud, when your name is dragged through the mud when you lose everything, remember that I gave you a way out. He walked to his car, got in, and drove away. Moments later, Cheryl's BMW followed. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my whole body shaking. Not from fear, exactly, but from the intensity of the confrontation. The pure hatred in Robert's voice had shaken something loose inside me. He wasn't just trying to get money anymore. He wanted to hurt me, to punish me for having the audacity to resist him, to fight back, to refuse to be a victim. And that meant he would do anything, lie, cheat, fabricate evidence, whatever it took to win. I went to my office and called Patricia. They just threatened criminal charges, tax fraud. What are they talking about? It's a bluff, Patricia said after I explained. A desperate one. I've reviewed all your tax filings, Margaret. Everything is legitimate. You reported all your income, paid all your taxes. Being a private person isn't illegal. But what if they manufacture evidence? They won't. It's too risky, too easy to disprove. This is psychological warfare trying to scare you into settling. Don't let them. After we hung up, I sat alone in the gathering darkness, my hands still trembling. For the first time, I felt true fear. Not of losing money, but of what Robert might do if cornered. But alongside the fear was something else, something harder, colder, more determined. He had shown me exactly who he was. No more pretense, no more masks, just greed and rage and the willingness to destroy me to get what he wanted. And knowing that made me certain of one thing: I would never, ever give in. Let him bring his threats and lies to court. I would meet them with truth and evidence and the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I was right. 1 week, one more week, and this would be over. I was ready. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and austere, with fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly washed out. Judge Eleanor Martinez presided, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and an expression that suggested she had seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Patricia. Across the aisle, Robert and his attorney, a slick man named Dennis Kruger, whispered intensely. Cheryl sat in the gallery behind them, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. All rise, the bailiff called, and we stood as Judge Martinez entered. The hearing began with opening statements. Kruger went first, painting Robert as a devoted husband betrayed by his wife's financial infidelity. For 8 years, Your Honor, Mrs. Thornton concealed substantial income from her husband, accumulating over $3 million in secret accounts. This is a clear violation of the marital partnership. Mr. Thornton seeks only what is equitable, his rightful half of assets earned during their marriage. He sat down, looking pleased with himself. Patricia stood, smoothing her jacket. Your Honor, this case is not about concealment. It's about theft. While Mr. Thornton accuses my client of financial secrecy, the evidence will show that he systematically stole marital assets to fund an extramarital affair, then initiated this lawsuit not out of righteous indignation, but as a calculated attempt to profit from his own misconduct. Judge Martinez's eyebrow rose slightly. Continue. What followed was 3 hours of methodical destruction. Patricia presented bank records showing the $50,000 home equity withdrawal. She showed credit card statements for flights to Miami, hotel rooms, jewelry purchases, all charged to joint accounts, while Robert claimed the money was for home renovations. Then came the phone records. Hundreds of calls and texts between Robert and Cheryl, many during times when Robert told me he was at poker games or visiting his brother. But the coup de grace was the emails. Patricia projected them on a screen for the court to see. Robert's words, in his own hand, detailing his plan to get half of Margaret's money and use it to start a new life with Cheryl. Your Honor, Patricia said, these communications show that Mr. Thornton discovered his wife's private income and immediately retained counsel, not to address alleged concealment, but to extract funds for his own benefit. He is not a wronged spouse. He is an opportunist. Kruger objected repeatedly, but the evidence was damning. I watched Robert's face as his emails were read aloud, saw the color rise in his cheeks, the way his hands clenched on the table. Then it was their turn to present their case. Kruger called a witness, a man named Gerald Hopkins, who claimed to be my close associate. He testified that I had once told him at a dinner party that I was keeping money from Robert because he didn't deserve it. It was a lie. I had never met Gerald Hopkins in my life. Patricia's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Hopkins, you say this conversation took place at a dinner party in June of 2022? Yes. Can you tell the court where this party was held? He hesitated. At the Thornton residence, I believe. Patricia produced a document. This is Mrs. Thornton's calendar from June 2022. She was in Chicago for a week-long consulting engagement. She wasn't in Ohio for any dinner party. In fact, Mr. Hopkins, you're Mr. Thornton's brother-in-law, aren't you? Married to his sister? Hopkins blanched. Yes, but so you have a personal interest in seeing Mr. Thornton succeed in this lawsuit? Objection. Kruger was on his feet. Overruled, Judge Martinez said coldly. Answer the question, Mr. Hopkins. I suppose, but no further questions, Patricia said, dismissing him. Robert took the stand next, and I watched him try to regain control of the narrative. He spoke about our marriage, about feeling betrayed, about how the money should have been shared. Patricia let him talk. Then she asked one simple question. Mr. Thornton, where did the $50,000 go? He froze. I told you, investments. You told your wife it was for renovations. You told the court it was investments. Which is it? It was both. Mr. Thornton, I have statements from the Miami Beach condo where Mrs. Davidson lived. You paid her rent for 18 months, totaling $37,000. I have receipts for jewelry purchased at Tiffany's, addressed to Ms. Davidson. I have records of joint vacations. Where did that money come from? He stammered, contradicted himself, finally fell silent. Judge Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Thornton, did you or did you not use marital assets to support an extramarital relationship? The silence stretched out, then barely audible. Yes, the courtroom seemed to exhale. Cheryl made a small sound from the gallery, half gasp, half sob. Kruger put his head in his hands. Robert looked at me across the courtroom, and I met his gaze with perfect calm. This was over. Judge Martinez took 30 minutes to review the evidence before delivering her ruling. When she returned to the bench, her expression was granite. I have presided over many divorce proceedings, she began, but rarely have I seen a case with such clear evidence of bad faith. Mr. Thornton, you came to this court claiming your wife committed financial misconduct by maintaining private accounts. Yet the evidence shows you systematically looted marital assets to support an affair, then attempted to use the legal system to enrich yourself at your wife's expense. Robert stared at his hands, his face ashen. Mrs. Thornton earned her income through legitimate work. She paid all applicable taxes. She violated no laws. The fact that she chose not to disclose her full earnings to her husband is not illegal in the state of Ohio. particularly in a marriage where finances were traditionally kept separate. Your claim that you were entitled to half those earnings is not supported by the facts or the law. Judge Martinez looked at the papers before her. Furthermore, the evidence of dissipation of marital assets is overwhelming. Mr. Thornton, you withdrew $50,000 from a joint home equity line, lied about its purpose, and spent it on your mistress. Under Ohio law, dissipation of marital assets for extramarital purposes is grounds for an unequal distribution of property in favor of the innocent spouse. Kruger tried to interject. Your Honor, if I may, you may not. I'm not finished. The judge's tone could have frozen water. What particularly troubles me is the evidence of premeditation. You discovered your wife's income and immediately began plotting to extract it, not through honest conversation, but through litigation and intimidation. The emails presented today show a calculated scheme to profit from your own infidelity. She turned to Patricia and me. Mrs. Thornton, I am ruling entirely in your favor. Mr. Thornton's claim to any portion of your separately maintained income is denied. Furthermore, I am awarding you the full $50,000 he withdrew from the home equity line, plus interest, to be paid within 90 days. I felt Patricia squeeze my hand under the table. Additionally, Judge Martinez continued, I am ordering an unequal distribution of remaining marital assets in Mrs. Thornton's favor. The marital home, joint savings accounts, and all shared property will be divided 70-30, with the larger share going to Mrs. Thornton as compensation for Mr. Thornton's dissipation of assets. Robert made a choking sound. Cheryl was crying openly in the gallery. Mr. Thornton, you will also be responsible for all court costs and attorney fees incurred by Mrs. Thornton in defending herself against your baseless lawsuit. I am ordering you to pay $47,000 to her counsel within 60 days. The judge leaned forward, her voice dropping, but somehow becoming more powerful. I want to be absolutely clear about something, Mr. Thornton. You attempted to weaponize the court system against your wife. You brought false testimony through your brother-in-law. You threatened her with criminal charges you knew were groundless. This court takes such abuse of the legal process very seriously. She paused, letting the words sink in. I am also referring this matter to the Ohio State Bar Association for review of Mr. Kruger's conduct in allowing perjured testimony and making threats of criminal prosecution without basis. Furthermore, I am placing a notation in the court record that any future litigation brought by you against Mrs. Thornton will be subject to immediate sanctions for vexatious litigation. Kruger's face went white. Robert looked like he might be sick. The judge's gaze was withering. You came into this court expecting to profit from your own misconduct. Instead, you will leave it substantially poorer, both financially and in terms of your credibility. Let this serve as a reminder that the legal system is not a tool for personal enrichment through deception. She brought down her gavel. This hearing is concluded. Divorce is granted to Mrs. Thornton on grounds of adultery and gross misconduct. Final decree to be entered within 10 days. The courtroom erupted in movement. Robert slumped in his chair while Kruger gathered papers with trembling hands. Cheryl fled, sobbing, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. Patricia turned to me, her eyes bright with victory. Margaret, we did it. You did it. This is complete vindication. I nodded, but the triumph felt distant, muted. I had won, yes. But what had I actually won? The right to keep money I had earned, protection from a man who had betrayed me, vindication in the eyes of the law. Important things, but not happy ones. Robert stood, avoiding my gaze, and limped toward the exit with Kruger. As he passed, he muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, I hope you're satisfied. I looked at him, really looked, at the man I had spent 32 years of my life with, the man who had held my hand through my mother's funeral, who had danced with me at our daughter's wedding, who had once made me laugh until my sides hurt. That man was gone. Maybe he had never existed. "I'm not satisfied, Robert," I said quietly. "I'm just done." He flinched as if I'd struck him, then walked away without another word. Outside the courthouse, Patricia and I stood in the pale winter sunlight. She was already talking about next steps, final paperwork, asset transfers. I listened with half an ear, watching people move past us on the sidewalk. Couples, families, individuals going about their ordinary days, unaware of the small drama that had just concluded in courtroom 3B. "Margaret?" Patricia touched my arm. "Are you all right?" I took a deep breath of cold air, feeling it fill my lungs, sharp and clean. I will be. And for the first time in months, I believed it. Within 2 weeks, the divorce was finalized. Robert moved out of the house, our house, now my house, taking only his personal belongings and the furniture from his study. Everything else stayed. I watched from the window as he loaded boxes into a rented truck, Cheryl nowhere in sight. He looked small, defeated, a shadow of the man who had once walked these halls with confidence. He was alone, broke, and facing debts he couldn't pay. The final accounting showed he owed me over $65,000 in restitution, court costs, and attorney fees. His pension garnishment would continue for years. I felt no joy in his downfall. Only a quiet, sad relief that it was over, and a growing sense of possibility for what came next. Spring came early that year, bringing with it a sense of renewal I desperately needed. The house felt different without Robert in it. Lighter somehow, as if his presence had been weighing down the walls. I repainted the bedroom in soft sage green, replaced the heavy curtains with sheer ones that let in the morning light, and turned his study into a reading room lined with bookshelves. My sister Ellen came to visit in March, and we spent a week reorganizing, redecorating, and rediscovering who I was outside of being Robert's wife. She helped me sort through 3 decades of accumulated belongings, and we were ruthless. Anything that reminded me of him, anything tinged with bitterness or regret, went to donation. "You're starting over, Maggie," Ellen said as we packed the last box. "New chapter, fresh page." She was right. I threw myself back into my consulting work with renewed energy. My clients had been patient during the divorce proceedings, and now I returned to them with a clarity I hadn't possessed in years. Without the weight of maintaining a dying marriage, I found I could focus, innovate, solve problems with a creativity I thought I'd lost. One client, impressed by my work restructuring their financial operations, referred me to 2 more companies. Then those companies referred me to others. By summer, I had more work than I could handle and was considering hiring an assistant. The money, that money Robert had been so desperate to claim, continued to grow in my investment accounts, but it mattered less now. It was security, yes, but not happiness. Happiness came from other places. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage. I joined a hiking group and spent Saturdays climbing trails I had never known existed, despite living in Ohio my entire life. I took a pottery class and was terrible at it, but laughed more during those 2 hours each week than I had in years. My book club friends threw me a freedom party on the 1-year anniversary of my divorce filing. We drank champagne on my newly renovated deck, and Janet raised a toast to Margaret, who showed us all what strength looks like. The warmth of their support, their genuine celebration of my victory, filled something in me that had been hollow for too long. In June, I did something completely impulsive. I bought a ticket to Italy, first class, a luxury I had always denied myself, and spent 3 weeks exploring Rome, Florence, and the Tuscan countryside. I ate pasta and drank wine, and stood in the Uffizi Gallery crying at the beauty of Renaissance paintings. I was alone, but not lonely. On that trip, I met a man named David, a retired architect from Boston, who was also traveling solo. We struck up a conversation at a cafe in Siena and ended up spending 3 days exploring the city together. He was kind, funny, interested in the world. When I told him, carefully, about my recent divorce, he nodded with understanding. "Sometimes," he said, We have to lose something toxic to find something real. We were taking things slowly. Neither of us was eager to rush into anything. But there was a sweetness to our budding friendship that felt like promise. He called me every Sunday, and we talked for hours about everything and nothing. For the first time in decades, I felt seen by someone, truly seen, not as a wife or a role, but as Margaret, a whole person with dreams and thoughts and possibilities. Meanwhile, Robert's life had taken a decidedly different trajectory. I heard updates through the small-town grapevine, stories whispered by neighbors, and shared in my book club with barely concealed schadenfreude. Robert had defaulted on the court-ordered payments to me. Patricia had to file for wage garnishment, which meant his pension was now being diverted to pay his debts. He was living in a studio apartment in the cheapest part of town, driving a 15-year-old Honda because his leased BMW had been repossessed. Cheryl had indeed left him, but not before maxing out credit cards he had stupidly given her access to. He now owed over $60,000 in credit card debt and was facing potential bankruptcy. According to Mrs. Chen, who heard it from her hairdresser, Cheryl had moved to Arizona with a new boyfriend, a real estate developer with actual money. She hadn't even said goodbye to Robert, just disappeared one weekend with her belongings and his credit cards. His former friends and poker buddies had distanced themselves after the details of the trial became public. Small-town gossip was merciless, and Robert, once respected as a retired principal and pillar of the community, was now seen as a cautionary tale. The man who betrayed his wife and lost everything. I even heard that he'd been turned down for a part-time job at the local hardware store when the owner's wife recognized his name from the courthouse proceedings. "We don't need that kind of character around here," she'd apparently said. "I ran into him once at the grocery store in August. He was in the discount aisle, reading the price on a can of soup with the intensity of someone for whom every dollar mattered, and he looked decades older than his 68 years. His shoulders were hunched, his hair completely gray, his clothes worn and ill-fitting. The confident swagger I had known for 3 decades was gone entirely. He saw me at the same moment I saw him. Our eyes met across the freezer section, and I saw everything in his face. Regret, shame, resentment, defeat. For a moment, neither of us moved. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it. What was there to say? He had gambled everything on greed and lost. I nodded politely and moved on, my cart full of fresh vegetables and good wine, the ingredients for a dinner party I was hosting that weekend. I felt no satisfaction in his suffering, but I felt no guilt either. Robert had made his choices. He had chosen greed over honesty, betrayal over partnership, legal warfare over dignity. These were the consequences, and they were his to bear. My book club friend Janet had said something that stuck with me. The